Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being part of today's webinar. I'm really excited to get started, but before we do, I'd like to go over a few items. First off, my name is Pete Sachs. I am one of the customer service managers here at Avastone Technologies. Our primary focus is on our clients' use of Microsoft Dynamics GP. Also on the line with me is Miss Tara Higgins. Tara, do you want to say good morning?
Hello.
Thank you. And Tara works at Microsoft. She's one of the Microsoft Dynamics GP technical consultants. And Tara, I definitely appreciate her being with us. But Tara's going to talk about some of the new and important features which have been added to Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013. And these improvements will help to further streamline your process. Tara's going to talk about not only document attach as it applies to all components in GP, along with requisitions and workflows for requisitions and POs. So again, as I mentioned, as you see on your screen right now, today's objective is to learn about the new features. Again, for document attachment, requisitions, workflows, and for requisitions and POs. This will be a brief overview. We are very glad to have a personal conversation with you after this webinar. Also, we do want your feedback. There is an evaluation form to follow. Please fill that out. And also you'll see on your GoToWebinar pane that there are two ways that you can ask questions. There's a questions portion on the toolbar, which can be used, or otherwise you can use the evaluation form at the end of this session. And we may not be able to answer all of those questions that you might pose on the questions toolbar off to the side of the screen. We might not have time to answer all of those right now and during the session, but let me connect with each of you in the coming days to answer your specific questions. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass the controls over to Tara for her to begin her presentation. There you go, Tara. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Pete. Can everybody see my screen okay? Pete, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. So thank you guys for joining the webinar. Today we're going to talk about the purchase requisition, the workflow, and document attach like Pete mentioned. This is exciting features inside of Dynamics GP, and so it's something passionate that I like to speak about and share with all of you. So with that, we're going to kind of take a look at our session agenda, and we're going to take a look at the requisition setup, the requisition entry and document.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Requisition inquiry and lists, the workflow, and history. So we'll take a look at all those today. So with this, I'm going to spend a majority of my time inside the product instead of looking at a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to just close this real quick. And now we're going to take a look at the Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 R2. Pete, can you still see that okay?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So in Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 R2, there has been the additional functionality, and so purchase requisitions, it works hand in hand with the new Workflow 2.0 functionality. You'll be able to order inventory and non-inventory items. You'll be able to purchase them directly in Microsoft Dynamics GP and link to a purchase order. You'll be able to drill back to a purchase order and view purchase requisitions. So to get that to work, we need to go take a look at the setup, and that is going to be under Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Purchasing, and Purchase Order Processing. So in here, with requisition, there's a couple things that I wanted to mention is that requisition also works with encumbrance management. So what that means is if there's a budget and you want to check it against your requisition line account number, and if there isn't a budget available, a warning message will be given to the requester, and the reviewer can later review and or approve or cancel the requisition. It also works with analytical accounting as well. So those are a couple additional features that are great with the requisition inside of the system. So with purchase order processing setup, there is a couple options on here that you'll see is that there is this code field for the requisition item number. This also, you can do the requisition next number on here. You can set that if you want to whatever you want it to be. It's a 17-character field, and it allows for upper and lowercase numbers. So this would be the next number that would show on your requisition. So you have the flexibility on that. Also in the setup, if you want to maintain history for the requisitions, there is a new checkbox on this window where it says maintain requisition history here. So those are a couple different setup options that you would have to do just once in the beginning. So with that, there is also a requisition button down on the bottom of this window. So I'm just going to open that real quick. So in here, very similar to purchase order processing, if you're familiar with that module, there is some setup features that are very similar. So for example, the requisition date, you have an option as the previous document date or user date. So this is going to be the first time when you enter in the requisition, what date do we want it to use when you open the window. The requisition line site ID, there is a number of options. It's previous line site ID and item default site. Very similar to how purchase order processing worked as well. What is really nice about having requisition in the system here is if you've already used GP and purchase order processing or other modules, is it has a similar look and feel to it, so you don't have to learn a new technology to use this feature. So it's something that you would already have knowledge on. Vendor selection, there is a couple different options here. Site, primary vendor, vendor with the lowest cost, and vendor with the shortest lead time. So you can see that there's some flexibility on this as well. The cost section, there is vendor last originating invoice cost, item current cost, item standard cost, and specified cost in the functional currency. So depending on what you pick here, we'll have the window function accordingly. Now the user ID area, what is nice about this is it pulls in from your setup, and so you don't have to re-enter in users. So from here, it's going to just pull in the users that you have, and you have the capability of giving them access to see what requisitions that they enter for display. So for example, one of my users, if for Andrea, I only want her to see her own requisitions, I would mark that checkbox over here on the left. If I want her to be able to see all requisitions, I can do that on the right here. So I have that flexibility as well. Requisition purchase, this area down here is if I want to create one purchase order per ship to address, I have that capability of turning that on at a high level. If I want to transfer my line item comments from the requisition. So like what that means is if I have a comment on my requisition and I want that to flow to my purchase order, I would mark that option here, and then my comment lines would flow over so I wouldn't have to re-enter them. Search for uncommitted quantities as well, I have that feature. And then I also have a couple different user-defined fields. I have two on the high level of the requisition, and then I also have two user-defined fields on the line item. What is great about that, it gives you the flexibility if there's something in the window that maybe we're not tracking and that's something that you want to use, you have the capabilities of here, and you can just type over the field and it would show on the window. So it really gives you the flexibility there. So those are just the main setup options that you would need to do for requisition. Those you would do it one time in the very set up, and then you're good to go to start using that part of the requisition. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is requisition works hand in hand with the workflow 2.0. So let's go take a look at the setup of the workflow. And workflow would need to be set up just once as well, and then you would be good to go after you have that turned on. So we're going to go look at the workflow setup, and that's under Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, System, and then Workflow Setup. So this is just kind of a high view portion of the workflow setup. Basically what this is saying is we want to enable the workflow, and then we also want to the email option of it, and then down here on the bottom portion of it is going to be more for if you want to approve or delegate or reject a requisition or some type of a workflow that we have in the system, you would need to enable the action part of it so that they can do an action inside of the email. So that is outside of Dynamics GP. So that is a high-level setup of what I have in my test environment here. If you need more information on this, definitely reach out to Avastone, and they would be willing to take a look at some of the specifics with you. So with that, I want to show an example on what we're going to be setting up into the system just to kind of give you an idea. And so I'm just going to pop back over quick to my PowerPoint here. So we're going to take a look at this workflow. And so, for example, I want a workflow where Frank, he's going to enter in a requisition. But I want a couple of things that happen at the same time when he enters in the requisition. First, I want it to go to his manager. So if the document is greater than 5,000, I want it to go to his manager. And then also at the same time, if there is a vendor missing on the requisition, I want it to go to Sue. She's the requisition clerk, so that she would be able to pick the appropriate vendor if I don't know one. Then also, if Phyllis, so that's Frank's manager, if Phyllis approves it because it was greater than 5,000, then I want it to also go to her next manager, which is Anne. So this is just a high overview of a workflow that we're going to take a look at today. So to get to the workflow, we're going to set up a couple different things in here. So we're going to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Company, and then there's Workflow. So there's a few different options over here that we have. We have the Workflow Maintenance, the Workflow Calendar, and the Email Message Setup. So we're going to take a look quick at the calendar first. So the calendar here, what this is going to do is I have the capability on putting what my standard work days are. Why you would want to have something like this is maybe you work Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And in Workflow, we have the capabilities of when an approval message goes out, we have a timeline on when it needs to be approved and when the task needs to go to the next person. So for example, if I entered in a requisition and I hit submit on Friday and it is at like 4 o'clock, I would have till Monday to approve it. So it'd skip Saturday and Sunday based on my settings here. Also, it has the capability of non-working days. So for example, if you entered it in maybe December 31st and the next day is New Year's Day, but you want it to skip that for the timeline so it doesn't do a rejection or move on to the next person, it can skip these days based on what you have your non-working days. So this is just a high-level setup. I only set this up once and then I'm good to go. So I'm just going to close this and we're going to go back and take a look at the workflow. So Tools, Setup, Company, and then Workflow. And then we're going to take a look at the workflow maintenance. So in Workflow, there has been 4 different workflows that were released in GP 2013 R2. There are 2 under purchasing, so purchase order approval and then requisition approval. And I also wanted to mention that from this drop-down, you'll see that there is a payroll one, so for time card approvals, and then there was also one for project, so timesheet approvals. Today we're going to spend time on the purchasing area. So over here, I'm just going to click on the purchase order requisition approval, and I'm just going to expand it here. So at the high level, we're going to create a new requisition, and from here I actually have one created, so we'll kind of walk through this and I'll show you what I have set up. So from here, there is a workflow type and a manager. So why a manager would be important here would be because if for some reason I set up a workflow and maybe I don't have something set up or I missed a step, it needs to know where to go for the last final approval if it's missing all the other criteria. So then by default it would go to this manager. You can have it set to anybody in your organization that you would want to have it in the setup here. So you have the capabilities. I'm just going to click the lookup. You have the capabilities of grabbing a user, and this is what I'm pulling from my Active Directory user. So I have it set to my administrator user. So from here, let's go take a look at a new workflow. So I created a workflow called Requisition Workflow. This is my high-level portion of here. From this area, I'm just going to take a look at the options first and down below here, and then we'll move on to the steps. So at a high-level option of the workflow, we can send notifications. So from here, because I have it enabled under the system setup for email, I'm just going to click this blue arrow. And I have the capabilities of when I submit a requisition or the end user submits a requisition, they can be notified in a number of different areas. So let's say I entered in a requisition and I hit submit. I want the person who hits the submit button to get a message. There is some predefined messages in the system, and we can take a look at one of them. I'm just going to drill back here and I'll show you. So this is a very basic message setup. It's been with the system here for a while. We just added a few message IDs. So I'm just going to drill back and take a look. So there were a few of them that were predefined in the system, but you can modify them or create a new one to meet your needs. So this is just a generic message, and we'll take a look at what that will look like in Outlook as well. So this is a predefined one. Like I said, you can do resubmit, approve, task complete, reject, delegate, recall, escalate, edit, and final approval. Also in this example, I have a carbon copy on here, so when the person who gets the final approval, I want it to go to another person. So maybe I want it to go to my purchasing person, or I wanted it to just be notified that their final approval was done on that requisition. I can carbon copy on a person as well. So I just wanted to show that example. So I'm just going to close this. So that is the send notification for completed actions. The next one is to allow approvers to delegate. So at a high level, we have an option to say that when it goes to the steps that they can delegate if you want this workflow to be able to delegate. If you don't want at a high level for the users to delegate, you would just unmark this option. Allow originator to be an approver. So what that means is if the person who submitted the requisition and they are in the workflow steps, if they can approve themselves, if that was unmarked, it would go to the next person in line. Always require at least one approver. This would be where you would always require an approver on the workflow. Use alternate final approver. Where this one would be taken effect is, let's say you have, you entered in a sales order and you have one of the criteria that says if the region is Canada and went to, let's say, Phyllis, and then you have another one that is another location would be USA. But what happens if the area is not USA and it's not Canada? Then it would go to an alternate final approver that you would specify here. Otherwise, the workflow would auto-approve. When the task is overdue, this is where the workflow calendar plays a part in here. So if the task is overdue, do you want it to take no action? Do you want it to go to the next approver? Do you want it to escalate to a specific approver or a group? Or do you want it to automatically reject the task and then have a notification, if you have that set up, to go back to the person that submitted it? So this is the high-level part of the workflow. So now we're going to take a look at basically the meat of the workflow, the steps that we want to happen. So from this area, if I wanted to create a new one, I could just click New Step, but I already have one created, so we're going to just take a look at one of my steps out here. So from here, I would create a step name, and it would be a unique name that I would put on here, and I could do a description. If I wanted to say it was greater than or equal to a specific amount on here, I could have that description as well. The step type, I have two options. So from here, I have an option for an approval where I want them to either approve or reject. What the task type means is I want someone to go do something. So that would be where Sue would need to actually go physically do something. So that's where a task would be. So I'm just going to leave that at approval. I also have the option in here to do a condition to always require a specific step. So maybe if it was set to a task and I want someone to actually do something all the time, I would have it set to require. In this example, we're going to take a look at a conditional one. So I'm just going to click on the blue arrow. So this opens up the workflow condition editor. This will allow me to put different conditions into my system. So there is some predefined fields where you can have a condition on it. Let's say you want it on an account number or a common ID or an item number. I have mine based on a document number, and it looks like I actually have it set up for $25 instead of $5,000. So we'll just kind of use that example going for if the document amount is greater than $25. So I also have the capability of, if there is certain fields in here that you don't see, there is, you can expand out the field list, and it's going to increase the number of fields that are in here. By default, it's unmarked, and so what that's going to do is just make you have a shorter list that we think that are the most popular ones out there. You also can do it based on a field value. So what that means is, let's say I select an account number, and then I can base it off of another field if I wanted to. We're just going to leave it as a constant, and we're going to leave it as greater than $25. So I'm just going to cancel that and leave it in there. So then I also have the capability for this specific step that I have. I can have it assigned to a manager or a specific person. So in this example, I wanted it to go to Frank's manager. Why I have it set that way is because, let's say I have Frank enters in the requisition, I want it to go to his specific manager. But then what if I have another person, maybe John, he enters in the workflow, but he has a different manager. So I want it to leverage Active Directory and take a look at who their manager is so that I don't have to create multiple steps in here for each scenario. I'm just going to let my system do the heavy lifting and go take a look. So that is a nice feature that I only have to set this up once and let the system do the work. Within here, there is multiple types that we can do. We can do by people and groups, so a specific user, or let's say you have a purchasing department or approval department and you have multiple people in there. You can pick a Active Directory group. The hierarchy, that's where I'm grabbing the manager, and you can also do the workflow role if you want, and there is a number of different workflow roles. So I'm just going to leave it as his specific manager. Here's where the time limit is for this to go through. So I have the capabilities of having based on my calendar if I wanted also to approve within hours, days, or weeks. So I'm just going to leave it as an 8-hour day. And then when the approver gets a message, there is a different email message that will go to them, so I have that turned on. The completion policy over on the right here, this is going to be more for who it's assigned to. So if I had it assigned to a group, then maybe I had 5 people in the group. If I had only 1 response needed, that would mean only 1 out of the 5 would need to approve. If I had majority, 3 of the 5 would need to approve. And then if I had all, then all 5 would have to approve for the workflow to go to the next step. So I'm just going to leave it on the manager on here. Then also the next one I have created, just going to click no. So the next one I have created, I have one where I did for, let's see, if it was greater than 200 on here is the other example instead of the 25,000. So in here, I want this step to happen after it goes to the other approval. So based on the order, I selected the manager approval. So that is my high level of this workflow. The other thing that I want to mention is that you can have multiple workflows in the window here, but you can only have one turned on, one active at a time. So I have this one active. I can see on here that it has a green check mark, so I visually can see that I have it ready to go. So I'm going to hit save, and we're just going to close this window. So that is the workflow that I have set up. I only had it set it up once, and then we're good to go. So we're going to take a look at the requisition area now. And so in here, we have on the home screen, a new area page that we added is procurement for a requisition. There is also time management that I wanted to mention that you can turn on as well, but we're going to take a look at the procurement. So what that does is it opens up this more of a dashboard on your home screen to get to see when you're entering a requisition, just a quick look at what I need to do. So I could click, see if I had any saved ones out there. I could see any pending action, ready to purchase or rejected, and then it also gives me a list down below here of the requisitions that I have entered, just a quick view to see some of them. I also have quick links to go to enter a requisition, view all purchase requisitions, or to find a requisition in the inquiry screen. There is also, you can go to the purchasing area and you'll still see the requisitions from here as well. But I'm going to use my home page and I'm going to go off of these here. So if I wanted to enter in a requisition, I could click this button here. And from here, I see that my workflow is enabled because it gives me a ribbon up on the top. I have analytical accounting turned on, so this button is activated as well. So let's say I want to enter in a requisition. So from my setup, it's taking my number that we had created, so my next number. So I'm just going to do a description, so I'm just going to say it's for test. I could have a comment ID on here if I want. I'm going to grab my ship to address for the default for my line items. I have the capability of doing the date, and I took the date from my system. And then my required date, I'm just going to leave it as the same. It defaults in here for me who is requesting it based on who is logged into GP. Here's the 2 user-defined fields that we mentioned in the setup. If I wanted to add another something else on here, I would have the capabilities of doing that as well. So this window looks really familiar to the feel of entering a purchase order. So on here, you can see that I can enter in an item number. I can pull up from my inventory. I don't have to reset it up. It just links into your inventory, which is great. Or I can enter in a non-inventory item. So let's say I just enter in test. And then let's do it for a quantity. And I'm going to do it for $35 because my workflow approval is set to $25. So then I can do a description. And then I'm going to grab my site ID where I want it to go. And then I'm going to grab one of my vendors. So if I would leave this blank, in that example, it would have gone to Sue if I would have added that extra task. But the workflow that I set up, I guess I left that one off. So the shipping method, I'm going to have that put in there. And then I also have the common ID. I can have it on the line item. And I also have the common ID at the high level of the requisition as well. So you have some flexibility there as well. And then here are the 2 other user-defined fields. If I wanted to do freight or tax, I have the capabilities of that as well. And then the line statuses, we can see that there's new, ordered, or canceled from here as well. So here is my non-inventory item that I'm entered, and I'm just going to click Next. And I can use the chevrons and hide, and I can see multiple lists on here. So one thing I wanted to mention is, let's say I wanted to enter in a requisition for, maybe I wanted to order computers, but I didn't know what vendor I wanted to order it from. I could do one line that said computers, and I could either do HP, or another one that I could do Dell, or so I can have multiple vendors, 2 different vendors on here, but when we create the purchase order, it's going to create 2 separate purchase orders. So you can have one requisition and multiple line items on here for multiple vendors if you want. Or maybe I want to order some other item and I needed to have multiple vendors on there. I could do that. So in here, I also have the capability of attaching a document. So this is where document attach comes into play. If I was using an inventory item, I could have a document associated with that inventory item, and then this attachment, I could have it flow from the inventory. So maybe it's a picture of the item, or maybe it's a manual for the item, or some requirements. I could have that flow to, let's say I grabbed 128 SD-RAM, and that's an example in my system. I would be able to have that flow, and that would be an indicator here, or I could attach it. At a high level, I'm just going to attach a document at the high level. So I'm just going to click Attach. It's going to make me save my document here quick. And then, so I see that it's associated with a specific requisition. And so I can click the Attach button. And let's say I'm just going to attach this test document here. There's really nothing in it, but it's just to show that we can attach a document. Let's say I don't like the document name. I can change the name if I want on here. It also gives you the date when it was done, the timestamp, what user, what the origin of the document was, and then I also, if I wanted to, I can, if it was deleted, I have the capabilities of tracking whatever documents that have been deleted. What is nice about this feature is that it stores your documents in SQL. And so when you do your nightly backups, or your weekly backups, or however you have them, it is stored in your SQL database, and so it's secured and it's stored with the backups. The other thing is, to be able to get to these attachments, you would have to have access to these windows. So it's another security part of it, instead of having maybe it on a shared drive and then having to go find it somewhere, or if someone went to the shared drive and deleted it, then the link was gone. So having it inside a SQL, you take away that that issue if there was one or not. I also have the capability, once it's attached, I can preview it if I want. So I have it attached on here, so I'm just going to click OK. So now my indicator changed from that paperclip to look like a piece of paper with a paperclip, so now I can see visually that there's a document attached to that. So at this point, I can save it if I want and come back to it later, or if I want, I can hit Submit. So in this case, I'm going to hit Submit. Here it gives me also a capability of giving the person who's going to approve it another, if I want to give them a comment. So I could say, please approve ASAP. So this is going to be a comment that's going to go to the approver. So I'm going to click Submit. So from here, I see an email that just went off, so I'm just going to open that quick. So this is the email based on what I had set on my workflow, that when I submit the button, I want my end user to be able to get an email. And this is what the very generic email, it's, comes out of the system, but you can modify it if you need. But it shows in here that the document was submitted, who submitted it, and here's that comment that I entered, so I can see it in the email here. So if I go back to that requisition, I can see that it's pending approval by Phyllis, and then it says that it's due by 9:34 tomorrow, so it gives me that calendar. I can also click on View History if I want, and I can see the history of where this document is sitting, where it's waiting for Phyllis to approve, So it gives me tracking on where this document is sitting as well. So I'm just going to close this, and we're going to go over and log in as Phyllis and see what Phyllis looks like. So I'm just going to switch over here. So I have logged in on another computer. I'm logged in as Phyllis, and this is her email. So if I go and click on the workflow, this is the email that she will see. So I actually made a quick modification to that email message. I added this section right down here where it gives me the vendor ID and item number. So from here, you can add that just by using that modified message and click and save. But from here, I can see that here's the comment from Frank. I can see how much the document was for, the required date. I see that it's for an item number. I can see what account it goes to. I also have the capabilities, because I have it turned on, I can approve, reject, and delegate out of GP. So I don't need to be logged into GP to do that. I can do it right from my email. If I wanted to approve it, I can click that, or maybe I want to delegate it. Maybe I want it to go to someone else to approve. I could click delegate and I could send it to someone else. If I am a user in the system, a full user or limited user, I can click on this link and it will drill back into Microsoft Dynamics GP into the inquiry zoom. So from here, I can see this. I can click on the attachment. Here's that attachment that we attached. If I click preview, it will open it, and here's my test document. I can take a look at all the line items in here if I wanted to. So I have the capability of drilling back into the system if I wanted to. But the information that I need to see is right in here, so I'm just actually going to click approve. And I'm just going to give a note to Frank. Approved. And then I'm just going to click the approve button. So from here, now I see that off to the right here that Frank got an email. So I'm going to minimize this real quick. And we'll open up Frank's email. And now it says it's been final approved by Phyllis. And here's Phyllis's comments. And it went to Frank. And it also went to Jill, because then based on my setup that I wanted the carbon copy to Jill. So I can see that all in workflow here in my email. So from here, I can take a look at the requisitions, but maybe I want to go look at my inquiry screens. Maybe I want to go see all the requisitions associated with me. So there is a requisition inquiry screen. So I can click redisplay here, and I can see all my different requisitions that I have in here. I can see that this one's been submitted. This one's been purchased. If I drill back on this one, it will tell me that now it's completed. So I can see that this one has been completed on here. I can click on the history if I want to see this history here, that it got approved by Phyllis, but then it skipped the next manager because Ann didn't need to approve it because it wasn't greater than 200. So that is great. I can see my attachment. My attachment is still in here as well. So this gives me the capability of drilling back. If I wanted to, I could purchase this one from this window, so create a purchase order, or if I drill back, I can actually go and from the, not the inquiry screen, but the entry screen, if I open it up in here, I can have it transfer over to a purchase order. So if I go to actions, I can do a number of things. I could, if I was entering it before and it didn't go through the workflow, I could have deleted it if I wanted to, void, copy, cancel the requisition, or I can purchase it. So I'm just going to click purchase so I can have it sent over to a purchase order. So from here, I can generate. I can see that some of the details. I can see it's going to go to this vendor. I can take a look at the non-inventory item information, and I can see a high level of the requisition. I'm just going to click generate. So then it's going to open up my report and tells me that my purchase order number is 2076. So then when I go into my purchase order entry, I can see my purchase order was created. I see this, it looks like a chain link. When I click on this, I can drill back and I can see that this came from a requisition document. I can drill back and take a look at that requisition document if I wanted to. I would have that capability of doing that as well. So it follows all the way through and it links it together. So that is a nice feature. So I have that capability. So that is creating a purchase order. But now I'm Frank and I want to see all my requisitions that I have out there. There is a list area on the navigation here on the left. So I can see at a high level that here are my requisitions. I can see I purchased these. This is another way to be able to see what requisitions he has entered into the system. I can do multiple things from here. If, let's say, I was the approver, maybe I was Phyllis, and I wanted to approve these at a high level, I could approve them from this window, so I could do a mass approving. I can see indicators in here that this one has a document associated with this one. This one has an indicator saying that there's some information that I still need to fill out. So I have the capabilities of seeing that at a high level. But maybe I want to see ones that are not submitted. There is a list view for that as well, or the ones that are pending approval. So I can, these are predefined lists in the system for you, so you can see it at a high level. So that is a nice feature. The other thing that I wanted to mention, so I'm going to flip back over to Phyllis and I want to show you that there is an option in the system that what if I'm Phyllis and I'm going to go on vacation and I'm going to be gone for a week and I want someone else to delegate to get my emails and I don't want to go to the setup to change that. I can do that in the system. I can go to Microsoft Dynamics GP and then I can go to User Preferences and I can go Workflow Delegation and I can select Automatically Delegate my workflow tasks, and the tasks that are associated with me, I can delegate it to a specific person if I want to. So if I open this up, I can delegate it to another user. So maybe I want it to delegate it to Anne, or maybe I wanted John to take a look at it. I could delegate that to them. I can do it for all workflow types, or I can do it by a specific workflow type, so I have that capability of doing that as well. I can do a start and stop time on there, so if I know that I'm going to be gone for a specific week, I can turn that on ahead of time, and when it hits those time frames, then it will automatically do that, and then it will stop when I come back, so I don't have to remember to come back in here. So that is another nice feature. So I'm just going to click out of here. So I turn that on, but I can actually turn it off if I want. So that is one of the other features that is nice if you need to delegate ahead of time. The other thing that I wanted to mention about document attach is when we look at the documents in here, document attach is associated with throughout the system. Document attach feature works in purchase order processing, sales order processing. It's actually the entire system. It took over what they used to call OLI notes, and so you can do it on this requisition, and you can turn it on if you want it to flow or if you don't want it to go to the next document type. So you have that capability with that. Let's say if I go open up my purchase order processing, purchase order entry again, I have that capability in here as well, or if I have it on a vendor, I could have it flow from a vendor. I have attachment options there too. So you can see that it's throughout the system. The other thing is anywhere you see this piece of paper, you can click on that. Let me grab a vendor here. You can click on it, and then there's this icon down here, and it takes you to the document attach as well. So you can see that it's associated specifically with this vendor. So that is another nice feature about the document attach. So we took a look at the setup of requisition management. We took a look at how workflow is set up for requisition. If you wanted to turn on workflow for purchase order processing, you can. I don't, and so how I can tell is I don't have a ribbon on here on this window. But if you want, you can turn that on as well. And then I also mentioned that there was one for the payroll time entry. So that would be under payroll, and so like if I did time cards, if I open up a time card, I don't know if I have one set up on this one. Nope, it doesn't look like I have one set up. But if I had time cards, I could have that turned on. If I did project time entry, that would do one as well. And those come with GP 2013 R2. So that is another nice feature with the system. We also took a look at the requisition inquiry and list. So you can get to the inquiry screen by clicking on from this high level, or if we go to purchasing and then inquiry, there's this purchase requisition inquiry screen. And then you also have the lists over here on the left-hand side as well. And then also the requisition history. That allows you to actually, if you want to remove requisition history, you can do that from the system. So if we go to remove purchasing history, there is a history type of requisition. So if you want to purge out any of the requisition numbers, or maybe you want to purge out attachments, you can do that at a high level here as well under the utilities feature. So with that, I wanted to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Pete and see if there's any questions there are.
Thank you, Tara. And the one question that came through, let me just open this up. The question is, are we able to punch out a purchase from a vendor's purchasing website with the R2 upgrade?
So I'm wondering, I guess I'm not quite sure of the question. Are they meaning they want to be able to integrate from a different third-party website? This is everything that sits inside a GP, so if you would need to have some type of integration if you're specifically going to someone else's website and maybe importing it in, but out of the system, this is just entering in a requisition inside the system here.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that might have a question that Tara could answer? And I don't have any questions that have come up just yet, so if there might be other areas, or if you might have some other comments, Tara, that you'd like to put in related to the requisitions and POs. Looks like we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. We can take a look at some of this. So we mentioned that if we had encumbrance management turned on, what it's going to do, I don't have it turned on right now, but what it's going to do is when I enter in a requisition, so I'm just going to enter another one here quick. So I'm just going to do one for $5 because this is going to auto-approve for me. But I wanted to tell you, when you enter it in here and you tab off the line, so now it takes a look at this in account, and once I click off this item, or off the account number, it's going to pop up a message saying if I'm over budget or not based on this account number. So I don't have encumbrance management turned on, but if you did, you would be able to see that it would pop up a message saying, hey, you're over budget, do you want to proceed, yes or no? And so that is a nice feature once you do that on here. Also, if for some reason I had this account associated with analytical accounting, it would also pop up the next window for analytical accounting, or I could click the analytical accounting button. I don't have distributions on this one. I click on it, but then I would be able to grab my dimensions based off of this account and this line number if I needed to report on analytical accounting as well. So I'm going to hit submit so you can see one that automatically approves. So if I hit submit, and I will go back to number 5, I can see that it automatically approved for me. So based on my dollar amount. But what if I had, I could do a workflow for different scenarios in the system. If I wanted a workflow step to take a look at the user-defined field, I can do that. If I wanted to take a look at this requested dates or requested by, I could do that as well. So I have a lot of flexibility with the new workflow. And some of the reasons why workflow and requisition was redesigned and put in the system was because they listened to the feedback from partners and customers, and they wanted something that was flexible for our partner community and customers to be able to customize. And so where SharePoint was great and it had its features, but we were really dependent on the SharePoint development, and it wasn't something that we could really develop because it was a whole nother team and we were based on their timeline. So even though that we made a presence in that arena, we weren't one of the larger customers to get it done right away. So so it took a little bit longer for certain development areas. So that's one of the reasons why they looked at having workflow and requisitions inside of Dynamics GP, is for that capability. The other goal was to definitely remove out the dependency of the SharePoint, and so now that it's inside of GP, it's just the same as when you do an upgrade to a service pack. It's in the system, so you don't have to do a special install to get it. It's just the same way that you install GP. And then it also basically gives you the flexibility of when you learned how to use the other windows in GP, it's the same look and feel. So you're not learning another technology to be able to start using this. So it's a more, we've gotten feedback where it's a lot easier to adopt because it's something that they're already used to using. So you have that capability as well.
Hey Tara, let me ask one other question that came through. The question is, in encumbrance management, what are the statuses when a requisition has been entered but not approved? And then the question goes on to say, or if it has been approved but not purchased.
That is a great question, and that would be something that I could double check and test on there, but my assumption would be on how when you go to the encumbrance windows, and I don't have it turned on, there is pre-budget and budget and the different fields that come in there into play, so I would have to double check to make sure which status it would go to, but I'm assuming it would be maybe pre-encumbered. But like I said, I would want to double check to confirm that for you.
Okay, sounds good. Another simple question, does this require Office 2013?
You can use the Office 2010. I think I have GP 20 or Office 2010 installed on here. Whatever is compatible with GP 2013 will give you the same compatibility to be able to use that as well. So I can share with you the requirements document, which lists all the features in there. So for example, we've had questions on, does it work with Office 365? And yes, it does. We've had that set up on here and tested it before. It basically pulls your SMTP email, so I've also used it with a Hotmail account and I've got notifications, so it works with that as well.
Great, thank you. One question I'm looking at here, are these features turned on automatically? The gentleman that posed the question said he would like the option of not setting up certain areas.
So in the system, when you install GP 2013 R2, you will see the requisition window here. Now you have the capabilities of taking voice security to it, so if you don't want to use it, you don't have to, or you can have it turned on and just no one using it. If you don't want someone to get into the window, you would just remove the security rights to that to get into that window.
Another question, what are the required fields on the requisition screen?
So on the requisition screen, when you enter it in, so I'm just going to go back to one of my previous ones. So in here, let me go back here. So you'll see on here that it puts it as some fields that are not required necessarily to put it in for an approval on the requisition, but there are required fields per se to send it to a purchase order. So if they enter in a requisition and let's say they don't know the vendor ID, then they could leave it off and submit for approval. But when it gets to the point where it needs to purchase, that field would be required. The shipping method would be required to create a purchase order, but not for requisitions. So it gives you a little asterisk next to it. So these are ones that you want to take a look at. If I was missing the shipping method, that one would have I think a red icon next to it. And then it also gives you a note down below that information is needed where it's marked by asterisks. So these are just a couple ones that if I take that off, grab one from here, use my lookup. I have the capability of leaving it in there, or I can just leave it off and submit the workflow. So it's flexible that way so that if when a person that enters into the system and maybe doesn't know the vendor or a vendor needs to be created, they could put a note in there saying to a purchasing person, hey, I need this new vendor created, and that's another way to notify that staff. Great questions.
Great, and a follow-up to that, Jeff is wondering if that should or would affect or change the steps that they use to enter invoices and POs. Is that correct?
Entering in the steps for it, I guess I'm not quite sure specifically what they're wondering there.
Okay.
If they're talking about when you submit it for the workflow and you go to purchase it, I'm just going to save that. When you purchase it, it's going to give you the options in here. So if let's say I didn't have the shipping method, I could select it here, and then I can generate it on the fly, or I can go and send it back to the person to resubmit it and fix it. I have that capability of doing that. The other thing in here I also wanted to mention is you can copy a requisition. So if there's one that from previous that you've entered, maybe you order something all the time and you want to just copy it, you have the capabilities of copying a previous requisition as well.
Great, thank you, Tara. And that brings us just about to our time for this session. Definitely appreciate your time, Tara, and as a reminder to everyone, your feedback is appreciated. Stay right here to answer and provide your thoughts for today's session. There will be a feedback form that will appear on your screen momentarily. Now, throughout the session, I have been noting all submitted questions, and I will ensure to provide answers to those as soon as possible. On your screen, you will see the contact information for myself and my colleague, Amy Aschenbrenner. We have the phone numbers are up there along with our email addresses. And we are here as a resource and a reference for yourself. If you may have any questions or thoughts that you would like to call us regarding or send across an email, we definitely would appreciate that. And Tara, thank you very much for your time. Thank you to everyone for your participation. Have a great day. And please fill out the survey form at the end of this webinar. Thank you much, everybody. Have a great day.